Distinguished guests, I would like to welcome each and every one of you to the 19th New Horizons in Steel Markets Conference. My deep respects to you all. In world steel production, in the last 3 years, we see a stagnation. We see a stop. Sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's not. But as a result, 1,962,000,000, 1,892,000,000 ton. It decreased, and then it will continue to recede by an additional 50 million. So there's a trend, and of course, the greatest share belongs to China. The stagnation in China has a major effect on the world steel manufacturing. Turkey's situation is a little bit different. Within the year, there is a recession of 1.64, and also the change is 12% is the growth rate, and it is the data of 2022 and 2023. It's like the makeup for the losses between these 2 years. But with this current performance after Vietnam, we are the second country increasing the manufacturing the most. In spite of this increase, 2021 one's production performance, we have been left behind that number. Okay, this is the world's crude steel production capacity, production and capacity utilization. In spite of this trend of stagnation, it still can use capacity by 75%, and in China it is well above 80% capacity utilization rate. Therefore, our capacity utilization rate is 62%, so we can see that the average capacity utilization rate in the world is at a good level. This is the development of Turkish economy. In gross national product, there is a recession when compared to the previous years. In the third quarter, there is an increase of 10%. This is the least performances of the recent years. And in the last quarter, between 0 to 1% increase might be registered, and around 2%, 2.4%. This is the gross domestic product recession rate predictions. This recession has not become a negative fact. It is supported by the construction sector, which has been negative in the last 5 years, but in 2023, after 7% of performance, and in 2024, 8% performance can be seen, so it affects it positively. Except for 2019, manufacturing industry has developed very positively, but now there is a recession. We're expecting a little bit more recession by the end of this year. And our steel sector, as I stated earlier, 13% by the end of September and 12% by the end of October. Therefore, our steel sector is differentiated in a positive matter. When we have a look at Turkey's crude steel production, in 2021, the rate was 40 million ton. After that, there was a decrease in the following 2 years, but this year there has been an increase, which is 12%. There might be an increase by 10%. And we could have reached 37 million ton, but it's going to be about 36.5 million ton. It depends on the performance in the last month of the year. When we have a look at the consumption in 2023, in world's steel consumption, there's a recession in 2022, 13%, and 2033, 10%. Then you can see here the recession in the manufacturing, and also there is a recession in the consumption. And in the next year, there's going to be a positive increase. This is the expectation, of course. And in Turkey's steel consumption in 2022, it was negative. It was -2. In 2023, there has been an increase of 17%. Of course, the higher activity in the construction sector after the earthquake had an effect on that. But instead of additional increases, we need to digest it first, and we need to accept it and keep it at an average consumption level of Turkey. In the first months of the year, there was a recession in the consumption, but in the final months of the year, it's decreasing day by day, and it's -1.8. And this 1.8 is going to be -2. But of course, the precautions, precautions, and also the cost-cutting approaches of the economy management, we are expecting another increase at the end of this year or the beginning of the next one. This is Turkey's finished steel consumption by products. The metal sheet is more than the long sheet. Since 2021, metal sheet, you can see the numbers. It is well above the long one. There's a bit relaxation with the increase in the construction sector. In the past, it was the flat 70%, flat 30%, and long 70%, but we're expecting it to change in the years to come, and we will see that the flat is going to be consumed more, and Turkish steel sector projected it beforehand, and for years, at around 2025, flat steel production capacity had been increased. We have surplus capacity in flat steel, and we can meet the demand increase in the flat sheet in the days to come. We have that capacity. We are now balancing it with export right now, but in the years to come, maybe export is going to be the second choice, and the need for the flat steel for Turkey is going to be met first. And in spite of the increase in the flat steel manufacturing, we couldn't control the import of flat product completely. In total consumption, it is around 42%, and EU was opposing to the numbers, which was at around 20%, but last year it was 49%, this year 40%, I mean the import rates, but we hope that it's going to be decreasing day by day. And after the dumping decisions, I think the flat steel is going to be directed more to the domestic market, and I think it's more rational approach in this regard. And Turkey's flat steel import by countries, you can see here the names of the countries: 2.5 million ton, China, and then South Korea. You can see here the numbers, the tons and thousands. Then Egypt and Russia are following. Total flat steel import became 7 million ton, roughly. So it was 8 million ton. So there is a change of -17%. When we look at the whole year, 9 million ton. So we are expecting it to decrease a little bit more. On the New Year's Eve, wire rod import was controlled and they took a precaution, and there was crazy increase in the import, and our manufacturers of wire rod, they were not producing. And after that, in our import of wire rod, there was a decrease in 54%, 374,000 ton, and in our export, 63% of an increase was registered. Import increased, export decreased, then the whole capacity started to function. There are still capacities working in single shift, but they always say that protection precaution was taken and the tax is being applied, so there's going to be an apocalypse, and the prices in Turkey are going to increase up to $200. But the wire rod prices, when those protection precautions were applied, it decreased actually. Therefore, domestic manufacturing, if it is being used, then the prices could be increased. That was the approach, that was the general opinion, but they were just on the paper and they were not understanding the real reflections of it on real life, and they were not knowledgeable about the real competition. So we are more than happy to see that this production precautions were reflected positively on the prices of the rod. Okay, this is Turkey's total steel trade. You can see here the number. The import is still higher than the export. In the past, the ratio between export and import, it was 20%, but it is around 75%. But next year, I think we're going to make up for it. And this is Turkey's total steel export-import ratio. It is around 56% in 2023. Right now it is 75%. There's betterment, but a modest one. And next year, I think we are going to see it increasing well above 100%, reflecting the reality of Turkey. Okay, as a conclusion, the situation in the wire rod, the prices didn't increase after the production precautions. For the flat product, such a similar situation happened at the beginning of October. When we have a look at the prices of SteelOrbis for the last 2 months, about $30 dumping decision was, after the dumping decision was published, the price decrease was $30. It was $630 and it decreased down to $600 in Turkey. So the apocalypse scenarios didn't happen. And Turkey has a reflex of self-protection, and it is perceived well in the market, and it is not directing the markets to the wrong direction. Lately, the EU has also taken long strides in this regard. As you know, there is a report, Draghi report. When it was first published, the Commission had Ron Berleyan, in a cold manner, stated that I don't like these reports, they are directing us, etc. Eurofair's protection precautions were favored in this report, and Eurofair made this Draghi report as a flag. They made references to these reports, and they made some announcements saying that it has to be implemented as soon as possible. 3 days ago, Juan Domayan, during the talks in EU, he said that he would implement Draghi report, and in this tripartite approach, the USA, China, they are going to follow their technological innovations and developments, and they will be in effort to compete with these two countries, and they would protect the economy of the countries. And they will also overview the commercial approaches that are leading to the dependency of the EU countries on the others. In free trade agreements, they say that we are a party of the free trade agreement, and then you're opening up your gates to the southeastern countries. Why do you do so? And the EU Commission representatives didn't say a word when we were explaining the situation to them, but we were feeling that they are regarding Turkey and China as the same. Turkey has the same capacity, and they would imagine that Turkey steel products would invade them later on. But it's not the case. But the EU, the surplus capacity can be observed very well by Turkey, and the existing capacity can be exported very well by Turkey. But of course, those export levels cannot reach up to invasion levels. In 2022 and 23, the Europeans tested it. They saw that because of the energy prices, our consumption decreased increasingly when the economy shrank. Our steel products, we didn't send them all to the EU because some countries in the southern Asia, like China, our facilities are not public facilities or state facilities. So we don't have the public opportunities as we are not public companies. Second of all, there wasn't any support or any subsidy given by the state. They were doing negative differentiation. We didn't have any subsidy. Therefore, the steel sector didn't export to European markets for the sake of making loss, and the export-import ratio decreased down to 50%. We are the partner of the EU, we are cooperating with the EU, but we are not giving harm to the steel trade of the EU. China, in the last 2 years, has been exporting, and when we have a look at their levels, from 30 million ton up to 90 million ton, and this year 110 million ton. And the following years, they say that they pushed the brake, but it was 100 million ton. So we don't expect them to take a step back if they don't take any precautions. We have a capacity which has not been used for so many years, domestic consumption capacity, 17 million ton steel import. It's not meaningless. We have a capacity of 59 million ton. We can produce 33% million ton production. How can we import 17 million ton? We explained it to the Ministry of Trade. I think they were more knowledgeable on the topic rather than that, and they told us that they would not persisting on these issues in the steel sector. And they said that they will persist in doing so. So they are going to take necessary steps to protect domestic market. Current account deficit for the last 4 months have become positive. When compared to the previous year's May, and we have a surplus in the current account deficit. CDS premium 920. It was going to be above 1,000, but it dropped down to 250. Is it enough? I checked the CDS premium of Greece. It is 60 points. And in Greece, 60 points, but in France, 40 points. For us, 250, it's too high, which seems to be fine, but we are adding the costs on top of the borrowing, but we are better when compared to the past. But in the months to come, if these policies continue, I mean, the internal resources of Turkey is only being used, and if we persist on having such policies, then in the years to come, I think we're going to be more comfortable. 27 million ton is right now, and it is expected to reach up to $42 million. And then we will use most of them, that internal production capacity, and the rest is going to be exported by not bothering our neighboring countries, and we will make use of our export capacity.
And von der Leyen has declared some precautions, and they're going to support us. So among these precautions, there are certain precautions with respect to defense. Well, when it comes to defense-related issues, there is a positive transformation from Germany's perspective in Turkey. Like Uğur has stated, we do not know what's going to happen with Trump's administration. Maybe EU Commission and EU might say, you just take care of yourself. That's why they invite Turkey to help for defense. As you all know, German defense minister, economy minister came to Turkey and they said that we neglected Turkey. They slowly but surely understood that they were neglecting Turkey. These are positive developments, and in years to come, these positive developments will help us in our efforts for decarbonization. So, arc furnaces will be our main structure in Turkey, and when it comes to renewable energy, we are working and taking very serious steps. There is resource allocation from EBRD and the World Bank, like 65% is going to be reached by 2035. So yes, we are laying the foundation very well. Like Amazon River, we are at the really proper place. Hydrogen and process changes, they will take longer. Yes, we know them, but we're not going to be outside. We will be inside, and those who can't solve these problems internally will seek for rational solutions. There is a transformative relations between Turkey and EU, and I believe these transformative relations will help us positively. These are win-win issues, so I believe in such an environment, things will be more positive. I'd like to take your attention to one last point. Chinese Republic is not like they used to be. Malaysian president said that we are disturbed by the surplus in steel manufacturing in Indonesia. In India, there is surplus of capacity, while Asian countries produced 73 million tons, and they have over 100 million capacity. And by 2029, along with the ongoing projects, 185 million tons of capacity will be realized. This is what has been mentioned by ASEAN General Secretary. 185 million tons, 73, 89, 90, 95, let's say. And in between, there is at least 100 million tons of capacity. And this capacity is seeking for markets to go. A similar situation happens in Gulf Countries Council. We export 2 million tons to this region, but now it is much higher. At the end of the year, they will import us to 500, 600,000. Along with ASEAN, they will be the second or else backup region next to China, because energy prices are very low. Automatically, this is unjust competition. There's also state subventions. So China is not just going to be China by itself. They will be other companies supporting China in different countries. So with a single aspect, protectionism, we can't go for longer years. Otherwise, Turkey will have similar problems. There's a very dynamic structure before us. They can't continue like this. And in 2015 discussions, they took a step back. They changed technologies with the state-of-the-art technologies. They created additional 200, 250 million tons of capacity, but it can't go like this. We have to show this to our friends in China. Because there is a country that you sell one, not one actually, 30 in return of one. So I hope we have to show our strength. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Veysel. Well, for Mr. Veysel, are there any questions from the audience? I'd like to ask a question, if you allow me. Well, Uğur has mentioned decarbonization. You have also mentioned that in the future, starting from 2026, there will be more strict regulations. And in Turkey, I know there are certain discussions going on. So what is the stage as of now? Can you please give us some information? Well, the presidency of the climate change takes care of these issues. We were late for confirming Paris Agreement. After Paris Agreement, climate change law was enacted, emission trade system was enacted, and it was really late for us to implement them. First of all, they said that general elections were the excuses, but I didn't know what was the reason. Maybe they thought that elections would be impacted negatively. Then they said that there would be local elections, and they said towards the end of this year, these regulations would be implemented. But we do not know when things would be made clear. Well, I think they would take our demands seriously because this is what they have declared. Well, if we can go in the same transition period like the EU, then I believe that it is going to be better because on one side there is regulation obligations, on the other side investments, and I'm sure that the EU countries will have certain threshold of tolerance. But the most irritating thing from the EU is that they say that the scraps in Turkey or in another country might not be used considering the environment. But nobody believes in this. They just say this in order to find scrap in a cheaper cost, and this is not giving us trust. There is a target, there is this climate change, and currently they say that we have to do something before capacity decreases. But when I check EU's situation, inflation is around 3%, unemployment is around 6%. So we are at a really worse situation, but we are still silent. They have allocated billions of euros. In the last OECD's meeting, I was making a presentation, and I said that this support from the EU has disturbed us. I'm not sure these are related to environment because there is this turnkey arc furnace facility, and there is no rational explanation behind this if they are supporting this. Well, this is not fair, but this is what we said. And they said, okay, we take this down as a note. And I also wrote a letter to them. Once in 6 months, we want to see this. How much you allocate for what purpose? We wanted to see this. Because if we want to save the world, then our addressees should also take this responsibility. And they should not hinder this process. Otherwise, we can't feel comfortable because on one side we do our best, but the addressees are not sincere. Actually, they try to save their own lives, and they do not think that it is important for the world. But I believe this is important for the world. But EU countries have this hypocrisy, unfortunately, and when they implement such policies, they are really disturbing. Japan and other Western countries said that we can make it more flexible in terms of CBAM. We support their efforts to a certain extent, but basically, this latest statement accepted by von der Leyen stipulates that we need to review implementations with high costs. We should not invest 25 just to get a result of 3. So if we lay the foundation well, then I believe we can work with the EU shoulder to shoulder, hand to hand. I believe we can get good results. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Veysel Bey, thank you so much for this really nice presentation. Well, I'm curious about this. The CBAM is something that we discuss all the time, but it is not very much discussed other than EU countries. It is like something which is necessary for us and EU in our trade relations. In another region in the world, are there countries working with respect to CBAM? Because in the United States, we do not feel the effects of it. Can you please elaborate on it? Well, to be honest, I believe that they are working on CBAM in China, for instance. There are great investments in CBAM. They can't be like coming from the behind. I mean, there are certain research, and in the US, 1,200 per ton has been invested for CBAM. And they are going to make such an implementation, which is very similar to CBAM, but they will do it independently from EU, and the UK and Canada will have similar implementations. It is not going to be limited with the EU. If we can say, okay, let's ignore EU and continue with other countries in the world. Even in India, there are certain studies going on, but currently they are working on coal limitlessly, and they want to catch China, and they want to outperform China. This is what I believe, because when there's stagnation in China, they want to grow by 8%, 10%. Their economy and infrastructure are resilient enough. It's a virgin infrastructure that they have, and I'm sure that construction sector can take care of it. So very recently, They said that it is 2030, or I'm sure that they are going to outperform China. So after coming to that point, in order to enhance our relations, I'm sure that we have to take these principles into consideration. We make investments on renewable energy, and we also carry out some research in other areas. And I'm sure that other countries will also take steps, because it is not related to EU. It is not related to their intellectual highness. It is because everybody feels this problem. There is a climate change going on in the world, and we are facing with really severe consequences of the climate change. I don't think that other countries can have the luxury to neglect this truth. And of course, the priority level might change. For CBAM in the world, we check that the steel producers make some investments, but they are mainly subsidized with the state. Especially in the EU, there is a great support from the states itself. And China means the state itself, because many production belongs to the state. Well, in Turkey, we don't see such a perspective, such an approach. Does Turkey have such an approach to support steel producers, to motivate this change? They might have such an approach, but I don't think they have the tolerance. No, we don't think that they have the tolerance. At least we can go gradually, so that the YEKDEM and INISH, these impacts could be removed gradually. Then they're going to help us for the finance in the long run. And we said that please do not leave it tax on us in the beginning with respect to CBAM. We want them to support us financially. There's 5 million TL support per establishment. They said that do not ignore the benefit. We said that, okay, 5 million is not very low. It's like $120,000. It's okay. But by 2030, $30 billion of resource allocation is needed. By 2053, it is much higher than this. In COP29, $300 billion of finance support has been agreed upon. So the figures are really enormous. They talk about trillions of dollars, but we can't even pronounce these figures. We don't have this financial capacity. We hope that Turkish economy's situation will recover itself, and we will be able to talk about these figures too. Naci Bey, Veysel Bey, Mehmet Bey mentioned that England should be involved. Tata Steel made investment, and majority of it was supported by the state. Well, I had this question. Actually, as a sector, we have to demand it from the state. In terms of decarbonization, scope 2 electricity consumption, it says that it has to be renewable, and renewable tenders are open. Well, renewable solar power plant takes 4 months, but to take the permit, it takes 2 years, 2.5 years. In Turkey, red tape is really severe, really long, and you have to compete with everybody. Well, what I mean is that as Steel Producers Association, we have to define a priority. In 2026, we're going to start CBAM and decarbonization, but we are still dealing with the permits with respect to power plant establishments, and our needs are increasing. On the other side, we have to make investments. So in the first tenders, it could be related to distribution, transmission, doesn't matter. Steel iron producers sector priority should be underlined. Does our association have studies on this? Well, of course, we have certain studies. When we spoke with the ministries, they said, okay, things are okay, but our interconnectivity might not bear this capacity. First and foremost, infrastructure should be laid well. Well, you say that it is 2 years to take the permit, but it is not related to progress or red tape. It is because of the insufficiency in the infrastructure. They try to save some time to eliminate the lacks in the infrastructure, but there is great resource allocation from the World Bank, EBRD. As these things get enhanced, I'm sure that permits will take less time. And along with the advantage working with the high furnace, arc furnace, I'm sure we can compete with the EU countries. It is not that we should not make investments or enhancements. We have to do these kind of efforts as well. Okay, thank you so much, Veysel. Thank you.